Admiral's claws scraped against the crystalline command console as the emergency alert pierced through the bridge of the Imperial dreadnought Eternal Dominion. The massive warship, stretching over 3 kilometers in length, had been patrolling the outer rim of the system when the impossible happened. Admiral, communications officer, voice cracked with barely contained terror. We're receiving an unknown energy signature. It's massive, sir. Unlike anything in our databases. The bridge fell silent, except for the steady hum of the ship's quantum processors. Had served the Galactic Empire for over 2 centuries, commanding fleets that had crushed rebellions across 17 star systems. His species, were known throughout the galaxy for their tactical brilliance and unwavering composure. Yet something about this moment made his twin hearts race in a rhythm he hadn't felt since his first battle as a young cadet. "Display the sensor readings," commanded, his voice maintaining its characteristic steadiness despite the growing unease in his chest. The main holographic display materialized above the command center, showing a 3-dimensional map of local space. The system appeared as it always had: 7 planets orbiting a yellow star, asteroid belts marking the boundaries between inner and outer worlds, and the familiar patrol routes of Imperial vessels. But there, at the edge of the display, something new had appeared. "What am I looking at?" His voice carried a dangerous edge that made several junior officers step back from their stations. "Sir, approximately 47 minutes ago, our long-range sensors detected a massive gravitational disturbance at coordinates 77 Alpha. Initial scans suggested a natural phenomenon, possibly a rogue asteroid or debris from an old battle. But then hesitated, his scaled fingers trembling over his console. Then it started moving, Admiral, deliberately, with purpose. The display zoomed in on the anomaly and felt his blood turn to ice water in his veins. The object wasn't an asteroid or debris. It was a ship. But not just any ship, this vessel, everything the Empire knew about starship design and construction, where Imperial ships were sleek and curved, following the elegant principles of engineering. This craft was angular and brutal. Its hull appeared to be composed of some dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange protrusions jutted from its surface at seemingly random intervals, giving it the appearance of a predatory beast frozen in the void of space. Most disturbing of all, the ship was enormous, easily rivaling the size of an Imperial Titan-class battleship. Yet its design was completely unknown. "Have we made contact with this vessel?" asked, though part of him dreaded the answer. "We've tried standard hailing frequencies in all known languages, sir." No response. The ship appears to be scanning our position, but it hasn't acknowledged our attempts at communication. Science officer, an elderly whose species had served the Empire as researchers and analysts for generations, cleared his throat nervously. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the ship's energy signatures. The results are troubling. Explain. Sir, this vessel is operating on principles we don't understand. Its power output is inconsistent with any known reactor design. The energy readings fluctuate in patterns that suggest either extremely advanced technology or paused, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as he struggled to find the right words. Or what science officer? Or it's using technology so primitive that our sensors can't properly classify it. Like trying to analyze fire with instruments designed to study plasma fusion. The comparison sent an uncomfortable chill through the bridge crew. The Empire had conquered thousands of worlds, absorbing dozens of species and their technologies. They had encountered primitive civilizations before, hunter-gatherer societies, barely capable of space flight, were easy to subjugate or ignore. But a primitive civilization capable of building something this large was a contradiction that hurt to contemplate. Admiral, weapons officer, interrupted, his voice tight with barely controlled aggression. I recommend we charge weapons and demand immediate surrender. Unknown vessels in Imperial space are to be destroyed or captured according to Protocol 7. Considered this option. The Eternal Dominion was one of the Empire's most powerful warships, equipped with quantum disruptors capable of cracking planets and shields that had never been penetrated by enemy fire. Standard protocol when encountering unknown vessels was indeed to demand surrender, and if refused, to demonstrate Imperial superiority through overwhelming force. Yet something about this situation felt different. The unknown ship had appeared without warning in a heavily patrolled system, showing no signs of conventional faster-than-light technology. It was scanning them with sensors that operated on unfamiliar principles. And despite having no obvious weapons ports or defensive systems, it showed no signs of fear or retreat. Sir called out again, his voice rising an octave. The unknown vessel is changing course. It's heading directly for us. The tactical display updated to show the strange ship's new trajectory. It had abandoned whatever it was doing at the system's edge and was now moving with deliberate purpose toward the Eternal Dominion. Its speed was increasing steadily, though again, the method of propulsion was unclear. Time to intercept, asked. At current acceleration, approximately 14 hours, sir. 14 hours. More than enough time to alert High Command and request reinforcements. More than enough time to prepare the ship for battle. More than enough time to run detailed scans and develop a tactical plan. Yet found himself reluctant to take any of these obviously correct actions. Communications. Send a priority message to Sector Command. Inform them of our situation and request guidance. Sir, our quantum communication array is experiencing interference. The unknown ship appears to be broadcasting on multiple frequencies simultaneously, creating a jamming effect. Deliberate jamming. Unknown, sir. The patterns don't match any known jamming techniques. It's almost as if their normal operations are simply incompatible with our communication systems. His tactical mind began running through possibilities. An enemy capable of unintentional jamming suggested technology that operated on fundamentally different principles from Imperial systems. This could be either a massive advantage or a crippling weakness, but without more information, it was impossible to determine which. Science officer, I want continuous scans of that vessel. Learn everything you can about its construction, propulsion, and capabilities. Weapons officer, bring us to yellow alert and begin charging the primary batteries, but do not lock targets. Communications, keep trying to raise them on all frequencies. The bridge erupted into controlled activity as each department began carrying out their orders. Stood motionless at the center of it all, watching the unknown ship grow larger on the tactical display. In his long career, he had faced rebellious governors, pirate fleets, and even rogue Imperial commanders. But he had never encountered anything that felt so fundamentally wrong. Hours passed in tense preparation. The unknown vessel continued its steady approach, neither accelerating nor decelerating, maintaining a perfectly straight course that would bring it within weapons range of the Eternal Dominion. Attempts at communication remained unsuccessful, though Science Officer reported increasingly disturbing findings about the ship's construction. Admiral, I've completed preliminary analysis of the vessel's hull composition. The metal appears to be an iron-based alloy, but it's been processed in ways that shouldn't be possible with conventional metallurgy. The molecular structure is incredibly dense, almost crystalline, as if the entire hull was grown rather than manufactured. Grown? Yes, sir. Like a biological process, but using metallic compounds instead of organic materials. I've never seen anything like it. Weapons officer looked up from his console with obvious frustration. Sir, I'm having difficulty establishing target locks. The ship's hull seems to deflect our targeting scanners. Not like shield technology, more like the surface itself is designed to confuse sensor readings. Are you saying it's naturally stealthy? Not stealthy, sir. More like camouflaged. Our scanners keep trying to classify it as a large asteroid or space debris. Only visual confirmation and gravitational sensors confirm it's artificial. The implications of this discovery settled over the bridge like a heavy blanket. A civilization capable of growing metal hulls that confused Imperial sensors represented a level of technological sophistication that didn't match the ship's primitive appearance. Unless, Science Officer, what if this isn't advanced technology? Asked slowly. What if it's something else entirely? His 4 eyes widened as he understood the Admiral's implication. You mean evolutionary adaptation, a species that developed space-faring capabilities through biological rather than technological means. It would explain the contradictions. energy signatures that don't match known reactor designs could be biological processes. The hull that confuses our sensors could be naturally evolved stealth capabilities. The inability to communicate could be because they don't use technology-based communication at all. The thought was terrifying. The Empire had conquered the galaxy through superior technology and organization. They had established dominance by understanding and countering the weapons and defenses of other species. But how do you fight an enemy that uses biology instead of technology? How do you counter weapons and defenses that evolved naturally over millions of years? Admiral called out urgently. The vessel has stopped accelerating. Sir, it's just sitting there, dead in space, approximately 1 million kilometers away. Studied the tactical display. The unknown ship had positioned itself at the exact edge of effective weapons range, close enough to engage, but far enough away to avoid immediate destruction. It was either an incredible coincidence or a demonstration of tactical knowledge that suggested intelligence gathering capabilities far beyond what the Empire had detected. Any change in energy signatures? No, sir. The ship appears to be dormant. No movement, no active scanning, no communication attempts. It's waiting, realized aloud. But for what? The question hung in the air as the bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. Outside the viewports, the unknown vessel was visible as a dark speck against the star field, silent and motionless. It looked almost peaceful, like a sleeping giant that might wake up at any moment. Sir, science officer said quietly, I'm detecting additional gravitational disturbances at the edge of the system. Multiple contacts, all following similar approach vectors. Felt his twin hearts skip a beat. How many? I count 12. No, 17. Sir, the number keeps increasing. They're appearing one at a time, approximately every few minutes. The tactical display updated to show the new contacts. Each was similar in size and configuration to the first vessel, and all were following the same deliberate approach pattern. It wasn't a single ship they were dealing with, it was a fleet. Admiral Communications Officer's voice was barely above a whisper. I'm receiving a transmission, not from the lead ship, but from somewhere else in the system. The signal is weak and heavily distorted, but it's in Imperial standard. Put it through. The bridge speakers crackled to life, filled with static and interference. Through the noise, a voice emerged, clearly humanoid, but speaking with an accent unlike anything in Imperial records. Imperial vessel, this is Captain Sarah of the Earth Defense Force ship Indomitable. You are trespassing in human territory. You have 1 hour to withdraw from this system, or you will be considered hostile. This is your only warning. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Stared at the tactical display, trying to process what he had just heard. Humans, the mythical species that existed only in ancient databases and archaeological fragments. The civilization that had supposedly vanished ago, leaving behind ruins and legends scattered across the galaxy. But humans were supposed to be extinct. The Empire's own historical records confirmed their disappearance thousands of years before the rise of civilization. They were studied as an example of evolutionary failure, a species that had achieved space flight but lacked the social organization necessary for galactic expansion. Yet here they were, commanding a fleet of ships that imperial understanding and claiming territory in what the Empire considered its sovereign space. "Sir," weapons officer said carefully, "what are your orders?" Stood motionless, his mind racing through the implications of this encounter. The Empire had built its power on the assumption that they were the galaxy's dominant military force. Their fleets had never encountered serious resistance. Their technology had always proven superior, and their tactical doctrines had never failed to secure victory. But now they faced an enemy that used unknown technology, commanded ships that confused their sensors, and claimed to represent a species that should have been extinct for. Everything about this situation violated imperial understanding of galactic politics and military reality. "Continue monitoring all frequencies," ordered finally. "Maintain yellow alert status and keep charging the weapons, but do not take any aggressive action. And get me a priority channel to High Command. They need to know about this immediately. Sir, the communication jamming is still in effect." Then break through it. Use emergency protocols if necessary. High Command needs to understand that we may have just made contact with something that changes everything we thought we knew about this galaxy. As the bridge crew scrambled to carry out his orders, Admiral continued staring at the tactical display. The human fleet continued to grow, with new vessels appearing at regular intervals. Each ship was different from the others in subtle ways, suggesting not mass production, but individual construction, another impossibility that hurt to consider. 1 hour. The humans had given the Imperial fleet 1 hour to withdraw from what they claimed as their territory. In that time, would need to decide whether to retreat, negotiate, or fight. Each option carried enormous risks, but doing nothing was no longer possible. The age of unchallenged imperial dominance was over. The only question now was what would replace it. Captain Sarah stood on the bridge of the EDF Indomitable, her weathered hands clasped behind her back as she watched the imperial vessel through the main. At 52 years old, she had spent most of her adult life preparing for this moment. The day humanity would reveal itself to the galaxy that had forgotten them. "Status report," she commanded, her voice carrying the authority earned through 30 years of military service. "All ships are in position, Captain," reported Lieutenant Commander James from the tactical station. "The Defiance, Retribution, and Vengeance have completed their approach vectors. The Imperial ship is maintaining position, but has charged weapons. Expected. Any response to our transmission? Negative, Captain. They're still attempting to contact their command structure, but our quantum scramblers are maintaining communication blackout. Sarah nodded grimly. The communication blackout wasn't really intentional. Human quantum technology operated on different frequencies than the standard galactic systems, creating natural interference. But the tactical advantage was too useful to explain away with diplomacy. Science Station. Analysis of the Imperial vessel. Dr. Elizabeth Park, the ship's chief science officer, looked up from her console with barely concealed excitement. Captain, this is incredible. Their technology is exactly what we predicted from the archaeological evidence. Quantum disruptors, plasma shielding, gravity wave propulsion, all following the theoretical models we developed from the ruins on 442. Weaknesses. Several, Captain. Their sensors are designed for conventional matter and energy. Our biometal hulls are confusing their targeting systems because they're trying to classify us as natural phenomena. Their weapons are optimized for defeating energy shields and conventional armor, but our adaptive hulls should be able to absorb and redistribute most of their damage. Sarah smiled grimly. Humanity's centuries of hiding had not been wasted. While the galaxy had developed along predictable technological lines, humans had been forced to evolve in isolation, developing solutions to problems that the galactic community had never needed to face. Captain, Communications Officer, interrupted. We're receiving multiple transmission attempts from the Imperial ship. They're cycling through every known language in their databases. Any luck with human languages? They tried a few archaic forms, Latin, ancient Greek, some early Chinese dialects. Nothing recent enough to be useful. Good, let them think we're just another unknown species. The longer we can maintain that illusion, the better. The Bridge of the Indomitable was unlike anything the Empire would recognize as a starship command center. Where Imperial bridges were sterile environments of crystal and metal, the human ship's nerve center looked almost organic. Curved surfaces flowed seamlessly into each other, covered with a biometal that responded to touch and thought. The crew didn't wear uniforms, but adaptive clothing that interfaced with the ship's systems, allowing for unprecedented coordination between human and machine. Tactical analysis. What's our advantage if this turns into a shooting match? Lieutenant Commander studied his displays carefully. Significant, Captain. The Imperial ship outguns us individually, but they're designed for conventional warfare. Our distributed fleet architecture means they can't focus fire effectively. Plus, our ships are essentially evolved organisms we can adapt to damage in real time. And our disadvantages. We're still outnumbered in the system overall. Long-range scans show at least 6 other Imperial vessels within a day's travel. If they manage to call for reinforcements before we can establish dominance, we could be facing a full battle group. Sarah considered this. humanity's return to galactic prominence had been planned for over 3 centuries, ever since the survivors of Earth's destruction had established their hidden colonies. Every detail had been calculated, every contingency planned. But no plan survived first contact with reality, and the reality was that they were about to reveal themselves to an empire that had grown used to unchallenged supremacy. Dr. Park, what do we know about psychology? The science officer consulted her cultural database. They're primarily logical and hierarchical, Captain. Military-minded, but not inherently aggressive. They value order and predictability above all else. This situation, encountering something completely outside their experience, should be causing significant psychological stress. Good stress makes people make mistakes. Sarah turned to face her communications officer. Prepare a second transmission. This time, I want to give them something to think about. Ready, Captain. Imperial vessel, this is Captain. You have 47 minutes remaining to comply with our withdrawal demand. Be aware that your presence in this system has been noted and recorded. Your government will be contacted regarding this territorial violation once you have departed. Any hostile action will be met with appropriate response. The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in contemplative silence. Sarah knew that every word would be analyzed by the Imperial crew, searching for clues about human capabilities and intentions. The mention of contacting their government would be particularly troubling. It implied that humans had established diplomatic channels the Empire knew nothing about. Captain, Dr. Park said quietly, "Are you sure about this approach? Once we reveal ourselves, there's no going back to hiding. Doctor, humanity spent 300 years hiding because we were weak and scattered. We're not weak anymore, and we're certainly not scattered. It's time for the galaxy to remember why humans were considered dangerous before the Empire ever existed." On the tactical display, the Imperial ship remained motionless, clearly struggling with a decision no Imperial commander had ever faced before. Sarah could imagine the debates happening on their bridge, whether to retreat, fight, or attempt negotiation with a completely unknown factor. Movement on the long-range sensors, Captain reported. 2 additional Imperial vessels are changing course toward our position. They'll arrive in approximately 18 hours. Expected reinforcements. Any change in the status of our fleet. The Prometheus and Atlas have finished their approach from the outer system. We now have 7 ships in position, with the main battle group still in stealth mode. Sarah nodded with satisfaction. The approaching Imperial reinforcements would find themselves facing not a single unknown vessel, but an entire fleet of ships that operated according to principles they couldn't understand. The psychological impact would be devastating. Dr. Park, begin active scans of the Imperial vessel. I want them to know we're studying them. Aye, Captain. Initiating bioresonance analysis. The indomitable scanning systems were another example of humanity's unique evolutionary path. Instead of mechanical sensors, the ship used biological organisms that had been engineered to detect and analyze various forms of matter and energy. To conventional sensors, the scans would appear as random energy fluctuations, but to anyone who understood biotechnology, they would be obviously deliberate and sophisticated. Minutes passed in tense silence as both fleets continued their careful dance. The humans maintained their positions while gathering intelligence, while the Imperial ship tried desperately to understand what they were facing. Captain, we're receiving another transmission from the Imperial vessel, reported. This one is different. It's not coming from their communications array, but from their main computer core. Automated translation attempt. More than that, Captain. They're running comparative analysis programs, trying to match our language patterns against their entire cultural database. They're getting desperate. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Desperation led to mistakes, and mistakes created opportunities. How long until they succeed? Hard to say. Our language has evolved significantly since the last time humans had contact with galactic civilization. Even if they find matches in their archaeological records, it'll take time to develop translation protocols. Dr. Park, what's your analysis of their scanning attempts? They're using conventional sensor arrays, Captain. Quantum resonance, gravitational mapping, electromagnetic spectrum analysis, all very predictable. Our biometal hulls are absorbing most of their scans and reflecting false data for the rest. False data. The ship's surface is programmed to mimic natural phenomena. To their sensors, we probably look like a very large and very dense asteroid with unusual mineral composition. Can they see our weapons? What weapons, Captain? Sarah laughed despite the tension. It was an old joke among the human fleet. Their ships didn't carry weapons in any conventional sense. Instead, they were weapons, living organisms bred for war, and equipped with the accumulated knowledge of humanity's greatest military minds. 30 minutes until their deadline expires. What's our tactical status? All ships report ready for combat operations, Captain. Biosystems are fully charged. Adaptive armor is at maximum responsiveness, and organic weapon systems are prepared for deployment. Any signs that the Imperial ship is preparing to withdraw? Negative. If anything, they appear to be preparing for battle. Energy output is increasing, and they're charging what appear to be their primary weapon systems. Sarah had expected this response. The Empire had built its reputation on never backing down from a fight, and even facing the unknown, they would choose confrontation over retreat. It was a predictable weakness that humanity had planned to exploit. Communications. Prepare for fleet-wide broadcast on all human frequencies. Ready, Captain. All ships, this is Imperial vessel is showing signs of hostile intent. Prepare for defensive action, but do not initiate combat without direct authorization. Remember, we want to demonstrate superiority, not start a war. The acknowledgments came back immediately from the other human ships. Each captain understood their role in the carefully orchestrated revelation of humanity's return. They would show enough strength to command respect, but not so much as to trigger a full-scale galactic conflict. Captain Dr. Park called out urgently, "I'm detecting unusual energy patterns from the Imperial ship. Their quantum disruptors are reaching critical charge levels. How long until they can fire?" At current charging rates, approximately 12 minutes. Sarah felt the familiar calm that settled over her before battle. She had trained for this moment her entire career, but the reality was both more and less than she had expected. More because the stakes were higher than any simulation could capture. Less because, despite their reputation for tactical brilliance, the Imperial forces were reacting exactly as human analysts had predicted. Signal the fleet. Formation Delta 7. Bioweapons to standby. Aye, Captain. All ships acknowledge. Moving to combat formation. On the tactical display, the human vessels began to move with fluid grace, that conventional understanding of space combat. Instead of the rigid formations favored by Imperial fleets, the human ships flowed like a school of fish, each vessel responding to the movements of the others in perfect coordination. Dr. Park, are they detecting our formation change? Partially, Captain. Their sensors are tracking our movements, but they can't predict our intentions. Our bioships don't follow standard acceleration and maneuvering patterns. Good, let them wonder what we're doing. The next few minutes passed with agonizing slowness. Both fleets prepared for a battle that neither truly wanted, but both saw as inevitable. The Imperial ship continued charging its weapons, while the human vessels moved into positions that would maximize their tactical advantages. Captain called out suddenly, "We're receiving a new transmission from the Imperial ship. This one is coming directly from their commander." "Put it through." The voice that emerged from the speakers was clearly artificial, a machine translation attempting to render Imperial concepts into human language. The words were stilted and awkward, but the meaning was clear. "Unknown vessel, this is Admiral of the Imperial Navy. We do not seek conflict with your species, but we cannot withdraw from Imperial territory without authorization from High Command. We propose a temporary cessation of hostilities while we attempt to establish diplomatic contact." Sarah considered the offer carefully. A ceasefire would allow both sides to gather intelligence and plan their next moves. It would also give the Empire time to bring in reinforcements and develop countermeasures to human technology. But it would also demonstrate that humans were capable of diplomacy as well as warfare. "What's your analysis, Dr. Park?" "It's a stalling tactic, Captain. They're buying time while they try to understand what they're facing. But it's also an opportunity to gather intelligence about Imperial command structures and decision-making processes. Tactically, it favors them more than us. Every minute they delay brings more Imperial ships into the system. But politically, it might serve our long-term interests to appear reasonable. Sarah weighed her options. The plan had always called for dramatic revelation, followed by negotiated settlement. But the timeline was more compressed than anticipated. The Imperial commander's offer gave her an opportunity to control the pace of revelation. Prepare a response. Ready, Captain. Admiral, this is Captain. We acknowledge your proposal for temporary cessation of hostilities. However, you remain in violation of territorial boundaries established by treaty with your government. We will allow you 1 hour to verify our territorial claims through your command structure. Any attempt to bring additional military assets into this system during that time will be considered an act of war. The transmission ended, and Sarah turned to her senior officers. Dr. Park, I want continuous analysis of their response patterns. Monitor all Imperial ship movements in the system. Any sign they're trying to sneak reinforcements past our perimeter, and we end the ceasefire immediately. Captain, Dr. Park said quietly. What treaty are you referring to? Humanity hasn't had diplomatic relations with the Empire for over 3,000 years. Sarah smiled mysteriously. Doctor, humanity has been preparing for this moment for 3 centuries. Do you really think we've spent all that time hiding without making any diplomatic contact at all? The implications of her statement settled over the bridge crew. If humanity had been conducting secret negotiations with the Empire, it meant that their return had been planned at levels far above what most of the fleet realized. It also meant that the Empire's response to this encounter had been anticipated and prepared for. All stations maintain alert status, but prepare for extended operations. This ceasefire could last several hours while the Imperial commander tries to contact his superiors. Use the time to gather as much intelligence as possible about their capabilities and intentions. As the bridge crew settled into their tasks, Sarah continued studying the tactical display. The Imperial ship hung motionless in space, clearly struggling with a situation that violated every principle of their military doctrine. Soon, their commander would learn that humanity's return was not a random encounter, but the culmination of centuries of careful planning. The galaxy was about to discover that the species they had forgotten had never forgotten them. Admiral paced the bridge of the Eternal Dominion like a caged predator, his claws clicking against the deck plating with each step. The temporary ceasefire had stretched into its 3rd hour, and every minute brought new revelations that shattered his understanding of galactic politics. Communications, any success reaching high command, he asked for the 10th time. Sir, we've managed to punch through the interference using emergency quantum burst protocols. High Command is confused by our reports. They're demanding additional verification of our claims. Scales bristled with frustration. How do you verify the impossible? How do you convince your superiors that a species extinct has returned with technology that makes imperial forces look primitive? Science officer, what's your latest analysis of the human vessels? Looked up from his console, his 4 eyes bright with scientific fascination and professional terror. Admiral, I've been studying their formation patterns for the past 2 hours. They're not moving like ships at all. Explain. Sir, conventional starships move according to Newtonian physics and engineering limitations. Acceleration curves, turning radii, formation spacing, all follow predictable patterns based on their propulsion systems and structural integrity. But these human vessels activated the tactical hologram, showing the movements of the human fleet over the past few hours. Instead of the rigid formations and predictable maneuvers of conventional warships, the human vessels flowed and shifted like living creatures. They respond to each other's movements instantaneously, sir. No communication delays, no coordination errors. It's as if they're all part of a single organism rather than individual ships. Biological ships, asked, though the concept violated everything he knew about space travel. Possibly, sir. Or ships so integrated with biological components that the distinction becomes meaningless. Either way, it explains why our sensors keep classifying them as natural phenomena. Weapons officer looked up from his station with obvious unease. Admiral, I've been analyzing their formation in detail. They've positioned themselves to maximize crossfire while minimizing their exposure to our weapons. It's a textbook example of advanced fleet tactics, so they understand conventional warfare. More than understand it, sir. They've perfected it. If this becomes a shooting match, we're facing enemies who can anticipate our moves and respond faster than our targeting computers can lock on. The implications hung in the air like poison gas. The Empire had built its dominance on superior technology and tactics, but these humans appeared to have advantages in both areas. Worse, they were advantages that the Empire couldn't counter because they didn't understand the underlying principles. Sir called out urgently from communications. We're receiving another transmission from High Command. Priority Alpha. Put it through. The holographic display shimmered and resolved into the image of Grand Admiral, Supreme Commander of the Imperial Fleet. The elderly, usually perfect composure showed cracks of strain and barely controlled anger. Admiral, your reports are causing significant concern at the highest levels of government. Are you absolutely certain these vessels represent human technology? Yes, sir. They've identified themselves as such, and their captain spoke fluent Imperial standard with what our linguistic analysis confirms as archaic human accent patterns. Impossible. Humans have been extinct for over 3,000 years. Our archaeological teams have confirmed this repeatedly. Felt his frustration boiling over. Sir, I'm starring at 7 ships of clearly human design, commanded by someone who claims to represent the Earth Defense Force. Whether our archaeologists think they should exist or not is irrelevant. Control yourself, Admiral. What are their demands? They claim we're violating treaty boundaries and have ordered us to withdraw from the system. They've also stated that our government will be contacted regarding this territorial violation. Grand Admiral's scaled features twisted into an expression of confusion and growing rage. What treaty? The Empire has no treaties with extinct species. Sir, I believe that's exactly what they're counting on us saying. The communication link fell silent as the implications of statement sunk in. If humans had been conducting secret negotiations with the Empire while pretending to be extinct, it would explain their knowledge of Imperial technology and tactics. It would also mean that this encounter was not accidental, but part of a carefully planned revelation. Admiral, you are to maintain your current position and gather as much intelligence as possible about these human vessels. Do not engage in combat unless directly attacked. High Command is reviewing all classified diplomatic archives for any reference to ongoing human contact. Sir, what about the reinforcements I requested? The Iron Fist and Crushing Victory are en route to your position. They will arrive within 6 hours. The human response to the arrival of additional Imperial forces will tell us much about their intentions. The transmission ended, leaving alone with his thoughts and fears. In 6 hours, his single ship would become a 3-ship task force. The question was whether that would be enough to deal with an enemy whose capabilities remained completely unknown. Admiral Science Officer interrupted his brooding. I've detected something unusual about the human ship's energy signatures, more unusual than everything else about them. Sir, I've been analyzing the quantum fluctuations around their hulls. There are patterns that suggest they're not just built from biological materials, they're actively alive. Felt his blood pressure spike. Living ships, possibly sentient ships, sir. The energy patterns are similar to what we see in higher order brain functions. If these vessels are actually intelligent organisms rather than mechanical constructs, then we're not facing a fleet finished grimly. We're facing a pack of predators that happen to be spaceship-sized. The tactical implications were staggering. Living ships would be capable of adaptation and learning in ways that conventional vessels couldn't match. They could heal damage, evolve new capabilities, and coordinate their actions through biological rather than technological means. Fighting them would be like trying to battle a swarm of highly intelligent space whales. Sir, Weapons Officer called out, the human formation is shifting again. They're beautiful. Despite himself, looked at the tactical display and found himself agreeing with his weapons officer's assessment. The human ships were moving in flowing patterns that resembled some kind of aerial dance, each vessel's movements complementing and enhancing those of its companions. It was unlike anything in imperial military doctrine, but it possessed an elegance that was undeniably impressive. They're showing off, he realized aloud. Sir, they want us to see how different they are, how far beyond our understanding their capabilities extend. This isn't military positioning, it's psychological warfare. As if to confirm his analysis, the human ships suddenly snapped into a perfect combat formation with impossible speed and precision. One moment they were flowing like dancers. The next they were positioned for maximum tactical advantage. The transition happened so quickly that Imperial sensors barely registered the movement. How fast were they moving? Asked quietly. Consulted his instruments with obvious disbelief. Sir, according to our sensors, they didn't move at all. One moment they were in one formation, the next they were in another. No acceleration, no course changes, they just changed position. Teleportation. Unknown, sir. Our sensors show continuous matter integrity, but the physics of what we just observed should be impossible. Closed his eyes and tried to process the growing list of impossibilities. Ships that confused sensors by mimicking natural phenomena. Formations that moved like living creatures. Instantaneous position changes that violated conventional understanding of space-time. Each new capability suggested that humanity had developed along completely different evolutionary lines from the rest of the galaxy. Communications. Any response from the human fleet to our reinforcement requests. No direct response, sir. But we're detecting increased activity on their internal communication networks. They're definitely aware that additional Imperial ships are approaching, and they're not concerned. If they are, sir, they're not showing it. If anything, their formation has become more relaxed since we received confirmation of reinforcements. The calm confidence of the human response was perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the entire encounter. Any conventional enemy would be concerned about facing increasing odds, but these humans acted as if additional Imperial ships were merely an interesting development rather than a serious threat. Science officer, theoretical question. If these ships are actually living creatures, how would we effectively combat them? Considered the question carefully. Sir, biological entities have different vulnerabilities than mechanical constructs. Conventional weapons might be less effective, but biological systems are susceptible to environmental factors, toxins, and disruption of life support processes. Assuming we could develop appropriate countermeasures. Yes, sir. But that assumes we understand their biological systems well enough to target them effectively. given that we can't even properly scan their hulls. We'd be fighting blind, concluded. The admission hung in the air like a death sentence. The Empire's military doctrine was built on information superiority and technological advantage. Remove those advantages, and Imperial forces became significantly less formidable. "Sir," called out suddenly, "we're receiving a new transmission from the human fleet. This one is different. It's coming simultaneously from all their ships. Coordinated communication. More than that, sir. The transmission is arriving from multiple sources at exactly the same time. Either they have communication systems that operate outside normal space-time, or they really are a single organism with multiple bodies, finished. Put them through." The voice that emerged from the speakers was unmistakably human, but it carried harmonics that suggested multiple speakers talking in perfect unison. "Admiral of the Imperial Navy, we have monitored your communications with your superiors and are aware that reinforcements are approaching this system. While we appreciate your restraint in avoiding aggressive action, we must inform you that our patience is not unlimited." The transmission paused, and when it resumed, the voice carried subtle overtones of amusement. "We are also aware that your command structure is reviewing diplomatic archives for evidence of human contact with the Empire. To save time, we will provide the relevant treaty reference. Classified Accord 77 Alpha, signed by Grand Admiral and Ambassador in Imperial Year 2847. This accord established territorial boundaries for human settlements in exchange for technology transfer agreements. Felt his world shift beneath his feet. Imperial Year 2847 was only 73 years ago, well within the memory of senior Imperial officials. If humans had been conducting secret negotiations that recently, it meant they had been preparing for their return far longer than anyone suspected. The territorial boundaries established by this accord include this star system and 17 others in this sector. Your presence here constitutes a violation of imperial law as well as treaty. We strongly encourage you to review the relevant documentation before making any further tactical decisions." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. If the humans were telling the truth about a classified treaty, it changed everything about the legal and political situation. It also explained how they knew so much about imperial technology and tactics. Communications, emergency priority to high command. Request immediate review of classified Accord 77 Alpha. Priority override Omega. Sending now, sir. Slumped into his command chair, feeling every one of his 200+ years. In a single day, his understanding of galactic politics, military science, and relations had been turned upside down. The humans had not simply returned from extinction. They had been planning their return for decades, while the Empire remained completely unaware of their activities. "Sir," weapons officer said quietly, "what are your orders if the humans are telling the truth about this treaty?" Considered the question carefully. If Accord 77 Alpha existed and established human territorial claims, then the Eternal Dominion was not facing an invasion, but responding to one. The Empire would be the aggressor, and the humans would be defending legitimate territorial boundaries. But if the Accord didn't exist, or if its territorial claims were, then humanity was engaged in an elaborate deception designed to confuse imperial response and gain strategic advantage. Either way, the approaching reinforcements would force a decision that could determine the future of human-imperial relations for centuries to come. Maintain current alert status, ordered. Continue gathering intelligence on human capabilities. And prepare for the possibility that everything we thought we knew about this galaxy has just changed forever. The Imperial Palace on Prime had stood for over 8 centuries, its crystalline spires reaching toward the stars like frozen lightning. In the deepest vaults beneath its foundation, Grand Admiral stood before a quantum storage matrix that contained the Empire's most classified diplomatic archives. His scaled hands trembled slightly as he input the access codes for classified Accord 77 Alpha. Around him, the most senior officials in the Imperial government waited in tense silence. If the humans were telling the truth, the implications would reshape the entire balance of galactic power. The holographic display materialized, revealing documents that had been sealed for over 7 decades. His 4 eyes widened as he read the first few lines, his worst fears confirmed in elegant diplomatic language. Territorial agreement between the Empire and the Earth Restoration Council, he read aloud, his voice barely above a whisper. Signed in recognition of ongoing human presence in 17 star systems of the Outer Rim territories. Minister of Intelligence leaned forward, his ancient features creased with concern. "Sir, what does this mean for our current situation?" Continued reading, each line making the situation more complex. The Accord recognizes human territorial claims in exchange for technological consultation regarding biological integration systems and adaptive material sciences. "They've been selling us their technology," Defense Minister said with dawning horror. "For 70 years, we've been unknowingly purchasing human innovations." The implications crashed over the assembled officials like a tidal wave. If humans had been secretly providing technology to the Empire while maintaining the fiction of extinction, they had been observing imperial development for decades. They would know every detail of imperial military capabilities, strategic doctrine, and technological limitations. "Sir," Admiral said carefully, "there's more. According to this accord, the technology transfer was gradual and limited, designed to avoid disrupting natural galactic development patterns while ensuring imperial technological progression remained predictable. Predictable, Minister repeated slowly. They've been managing our technological development, controlling it. Worse than that, realized. They've been preparing to counter it. The quantum communicator on the chamber's central table chimed with an urgent priority signal. Activated it, knowing it could only be Admiral with an update from the crisis zone. Grand Admiral, we have a situation. His voice carried across interstellar space with barely controlled urgency. The human fleet has grown to over 20 vessels, and our reinforcements are 6 hours overdue. Overdue, explain. Sir, the Iron Fist and Crushing Victory never arrived at their scheduled coordinates. Long-range sensors show they've been intercepted. Felt his blood turn to ice. Destroyed. Unknown, sir. They're no longer responding to communications, but we're not detecting debris fields or distress signals. It's as if they simply vanished from Imperial space. The assembled officials exchanged worried glances. 2 Imperial dreadnoughts didn't simply vanish without explanation. If the humans had captured or destroyed them without leaving evidence, it demonstrated capabilities far beyond what anyone had imagined. Admiral, what's the current status of your engagement? Sir, the humans have been remarkably patient, but their latest communication suggests that patience is ending. They've given us 6 additional hours to confirm our withdrawal from what they claim is their territory. And if we refuse, the pause from across the galaxy spoke volumes. Sir, based on my analysis of their capabilities, refusal would likely result in the complete destruction of my task force. These aren't conventional opponents. They're something entirely beyond our experience. Closed the communication channel and turned to face his colleagues. In the space of a few hours, the Empire's military supremacy had evaporated like smoke in the wind. They were facing an enemy who had been preparing for this encounter for decades, who understood Imperial capabilities better than the Imperials themselves, and who possessed technology that operated according to unknown principles. Options, he asked simply. Defense Minister spoke first. Military response is clearly inadvisable. If they've neutralized 2 dreadnoughts without our sensors detecting the engagement, we're facing capabilities that make conventional warfare pointless. Diplomatic response, asked Foreign Minister, complicated by the fact that they appear to have been conducting secret negotiations with us for decades. Any diplomatic initiative would have to acknowledge that we've been either criminally negligent or deliberately deceived. Intelligence Minister cleared his throat nervously. Sir, there's another possibility. What if this entire situation is a human intelligence operation designed to gauge our response capabilities? Explain. If they've been secretly monitoring our technological and military development, they would want to understand our strategic decision-making processes. This encounter could be a test to see how we respond to superior opposition. considered this possibility. If the humans were conducting an intelligence gathering operation rather than preparing for war, it suggested that their intentions might be more complex than simple territorial expansion. If that's true, he said slowly, then our response will determine the nature of future human-imperial relations. Act aggressively, and we confirm their worst fears about imperial intentions. Act weakly, and we invite further territorial demands. What about acting intelligently? Foreign Minister suggested. Acknowledge the legitimacy of their territorial claims, request formal diplomatic contact, and attempt to establish a new relationship based on mutual respect rather than imperial dominance. The suggestion hung in the air like a challenge to everything the empire had stood for. For 8 centuries, imperial policy had been based on technological and military superiority. The idea of negotiating with equals, or worse, with superiors, violated every principle of imperial governance. Sir, Admiral said quietly, I believe that may be our only viable option. Before anyone could respond, the quantum communicator activated again with an incoming priority transmission. This time, the voice that emerged was unmistakably human and carried an authority that made everyone in the chamber stand. Grand Admiral, this is Admiral of the Earth Defense Force. I believe we need to have a conversation. The officials exchanged startled glances. How did the humans know they were in the classified archives? How had they penetrated imperial communication security to reach the highest levels of government directly? This is Grand Admiral. Admiral, your forces are currently in violation of imperial territorial sovereignty. Grand Admiral, my forces are operating within boundaries established by classified Accord 77 Alpha, signed by your predecessor, and by the Imperial Senate in 2847. We have recordings of the negotiation sessions if you need additional verification. Felt the ground shifting beneath his feet again. Not only did the humans have copies of the accord, they had recordings of the negotiations that led to its creation. They possessed evidence that could prove imperial complicity in the deception of their own government. Admiral, what are your intentions regarding future human-imperial relations? That depends entirely on your response to our current territorial claims, Grand Admiral. If the Empire acknowledges our legitimate boundaries and agrees to formal diplomatic recognition, humanity is prepared to establish normal interstellar relations. And if we refuse, the pause was brief, but loaded with implications. Grand Admiral, humanity spent 3 centuries preparing for our return to galactic civilization. We did not make that preparation solely for peaceful purposes. The threat was clear without being explicit. Humanity had the capability to enforce their territorial claims through military action if necessary. The question was whether the Empire would choose negotiation or confrontation. Admiral, I am prepared to authorize formal diplomatic contact between our governments. However, I will need assurances regarding the safety of Imperial personnel currently in disputed territories. Admiral and his crew are in no immediate danger, Grand Admiral. However, we will need confirmation of Imperial recognition of our territorial boundaries before we can guarantee their safe passage out of human space, and the missing Imperial reinforcements. Another pause, this one longer and more ominous. Grand Admiral, the crews of the Iron Fist and Crushing Victory are safe and will be returned to Imperial space once diplomatic protocols are established. Their ships, however, have been impounded pending resolution of the territorial dispute. Felt his knees weaken. The humans had captured 2 Imperial dreadnoughts without any Imperial forces detecting the engagement. It was a demonstration of military capability so far beyond Imperial understanding that it bordered on the supernatural. Admiral, I hereby formally acknowledge human territorial claims in the systems by classified Accord 77 Alpha and request immediate diplomatic contact to establish formal relations between our governments. Acknowledged, Grand Admiral. Diplomatic representatives will arrive at coordinates you specify within 72 hours. I trust the Empire will be prepared for productive negotiations. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. In the space of a few hours, the Imperial government had gone from supreme confidence to formal surrender of territorial claims to a species they had believed extinct. Sir, Intelligence Minister said quietly, "What do we tell the people?" Looked around at his colleagues, seeing his own exhaustion and bewilderment reflected in their faces. The Empire had just acknowledged that it was no longer the supreme power in the galaxy, that humanity had returned with capabilities that made Imperial military might irrelevant. "We tell them the truth," he said finally. "We tell them that the galaxy is about to become a much more interesting place." The quantum communicator activated one final time. But this transmission was clearly meant for public broadcast across the entire Imperial communication network. Citizens of the Empire, this is Admiral of the Earth Defense Force. After 3 centuries of isolation, humanity is pleased to announce our return to galactic civilization. We look forward to establishing peaceful and productive relations with all species who share our commitment to mutual respect and cooperative development. Please be assured that human territorial claims are limited and well-defined. We have no interest in Imperial conquest or expansion beyond our traditional boundaries. However, we will defend our legitimate territories and citizens against any aggressive action. We invite you to learn more about human culture and achievements during our period of isolation. You may find that reports of our extinction were greatly exaggerated. The transmission ended with what could only be described as a distinctly human chuckle. Grand Admiral slumped in his chair, staring at the diplomatic archives that had just changed the balance of galactic power forever. Humanity had not simply returned from extinction. They had returned as the dominant military force in the galaxy, with technology that made imperial achievements look primitive and strategic planning that stretched back over centuries. The age of imperial supremacy was over before anyone in the Empire had realized it was ending. 6 months after first contact, Admiral Sarah stood in the observation deck of humanity's diplomatic station, orbiting the neutral world of Haven Prime. Through the transparent aluminum viewports, she could see ships from dozens of species arriving for the first Galactic Cooperation Summit, an event that would have been unthinkable just a year ago. The station itself was a marvel of human bioengineering, its living walls pulsing gently with organic light, while adaptive materials shifted to accommodate the environmental needs of different species. To visiting dignitaries, it looked like a miracle of advanced technology. To Sarah, it was simply the logical evolution of humanity's centuries-long adaptation to life in hostile environments. "Admiral," came a voice from behind her. She turned to see Dr. Elizabeth Park approaching with a data pad and an expression of barely contained excitement. "The final attendance reports are in. Every major galactic civilization is sending representatives, including the Grand Admiral himself is leading their delegation, along with Admiral, who specifically requested to be part of the diplomatic mission." Sarah smiled at that news. Had shown remarkable adaptability in the months following their first encounter, becoming one of the most effective advocates for human imperial cooperation within the military hierarchy. His willingness to acknowledge the reality of human capabilities rather than deny it had made him invaluable as a bridge between the two civilizations. What about the Confederation? Their entire High Council is coming. Apparently, they're fascinated by our biotechnology and want to discuss potential research partnerships. And the Republic, Dr. Park's expression grew more serious. They're sending observers, but they're still suspicious of our motives. The fact that we hid from galactic civilization for 3 centuries has them concerned about what else we might be hiding. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Though we're right to be cautious, humanity was indeed hiding things that would shock the galactic community. The bioships were just the beginning. In their 3 centuries of isolation, humans had developed capabilities that bordered on the miraculous, adapting themselves and their technology to survive in environments that would kill any other known species. Dr. Park, are you prepared for the technology demonstration? As ready as we can be, Admiral. The question is whether the galactic community is ready for what we're going to show them. The technology demonstration had been Sarah's idea, a way to establish humanity's credibility, while also making clear that their capabilities extended far beyond what had been revealed during the territorial crisis. It was a calculated risk that could either cement human status as equals in galactic civilization or convince other species that humanity represented an existential threat. Communications signal the approaching delegations, welcome them to Haven Prime, and provide docking coordinates for their vessels. Aye, Admiral. All ships are acknowledging our signals and proceeding to assigned berths. Sarah watched as the various ships maneuvered toward the station. Each vessel told a story about its civilization's technological and cultural development. The ships were elegant and efficient, reflecting their people's love of order and precision. The vessels were heavily armored and bristling with weapons, showing their warrior culture's priorities. The sleek research ships, equipped with sensor arrays that could analyze a planet's composition from light years away. And then there were the human ships. The escort fleet surrounding the diplomatic station looked like nothing else in known space. Where other civilizations built machines, humans had grown organisms. The ships moved with fluid grace, their biometal hulls shifting color and texture in response to local conditions. To observers from other species, they looked more like sea creatures swimming through space than constructed vessels. Admiral, communications officer, called out, "We're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command." "Put it through." The holographic display materialized to show Admiral, the current head of Earth's Defense Council, and Sarah's former commanding officer. His weathered face carried the weight of 3 centuries of human secrecy and the responsibility of revealing humanity's true capabilities to a galaxy that might not be ready for them. "Sarah, final authorization has come through from the Council. You are cleared to proceed with full disclosure protocols." "All of them, sir. All of them." The Council has decided that half measures and gradual revelation have served their purpose. It's time for the galaxy to understand exactly what humanity has become. Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Full disclosure meant revealing not just advanced technology, but the extent to which humanity had transcended the biological limitations that constrained other species. It meant showing the galaxy that humans had become something unprecedented, a species that had successfully merged biological evolution with technological advancement to create capabilities that bordered on the godlike. "Sir, are we prepared for the potential backlash?" "As prepared as we can be, Admiral. The fleet stands ready, and our defensive positions are secure. But the Council believes that the benefits of full transparency outweigh the risks of continued secrecy." The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. In a few hours, delegates from across the galaxy would witness demonstrations of human capability that would fundamentally alter their understanding of what was possible for intelligent life. Dr. Park, initiate final preparations for the demonstration and signal the main fleet it's time to reveal what we've been hiding. over the next hour, ships began arriving from the outer system. But these weren't the relatively conventional bioships that had confronted Admiral 6 months earlier. These were the vessels that represented humanity's true technological achievement, ships that existed at the intersection of biology, technology, and something that could only be called magic. The first to arrive was the Evolution, a vessel that appeared to be grown from crystallized DNA. Its hull shifted and flowed like living tissue, but analysis would show that it was composed of materials that didn't exist anywhere else in the galaxy. The ship didn't just travel through space, it adapted space to its needs, creating localized alterations in physics that allowed it to move in ways that violated conventional understanding of relativity. Behind it came the Transcendence, a ship that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Parts of its structure flickered in and out of visible existence as it manipulated quantum probability fields to achieve effects that other species would consider supernatural. The reaction from the gathered diplomatic vessels was immediate and alarmed. Emergency communications filled the spectrum as various species tried to understand what they were seeing. Some demanded explanations. Others prepared to evacuate. A few began charging weapons in purely defensive responses to phenomena that their military doctrines had no way to categorize. Admiral called out with barely controlled excitement. We're receiving urgent communications from all delegations. They want to know what those ships are and how they work. Tell them they're about to find out, Sarah replied calmly. The main conference hall of the diplomatic station had been designed to accommodate representatives from dozens of species, with environmental controls that could create appropriate atmospheric conditions for each delegation. As the assembled diplomats, military officers, and scientists took their seats, Sarah could feel the tension in the air like a physical presence. Grand Admiral sat in the front row with Admiral beside him, both studying data pads that contained preliminary information about the ships they had observed arriving. Behind them, representatives from the major galactic powers whispered among themselves, their body language ranging from curiosity to barely controlled fear. Sarah took the podium at the center of the hall, looking out at an audience that represented the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. In a few minutes, she would either establish humanity as the galaxy's new leader or trigger a coalition war that could devastate multiple star systems. Distinguished delegates, thank you for attending this summit. 6 months ago, humanity revealed itself to galactic civilization after 3 centuries of isolation. Today, we will show you what we accomplished during those centuries of solitude. She activated the hall's holographic displays, showing images of Earth as it had been before humanity's exodus. Green and blue and white, teeming with life, the of a species that had seemed destined for greatness before vanishing from galactic history. Humanity left known space not because we were weak, but because we were different. While other species developed technology to overcome their biological limitations, we chose to transcend those limitations entirely. The display shifted to show the first human colonies, primitive settlements on harsh worlds that should have been uninhabitable. But instead of terraforming those worlds to suit human needs, the colonists had adapted themselves to survive in alien environments. We didn't just learn to live in space, Sarah continued. We learned to become space. We didn't just build ships, we grew them. We didn't just develop faster than light travel. We learned to step outside the normal flow of time and space. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the audience. The delegation was studying their instruments with obvious confusion, while they were frantically taking notes on everything they observed. Today, you will witness capabilities that represent 3 centuries of focused evolution. You will see technology that operates according to principles your scientists haven't discovered. And you will understand why humanity chose to reveal itself now, at this moment in galactic history. Sarah activated the external sensors, displaying the space around Haven Prime, where the human fleet waited in formation. But now, the ships were beginning to demonstrate their true capabilities. The evolution began to change, its crystalline structure flowing like liquid while maintaining perfect structural integrity. In moments, it had transformed from a sleek courier vessel into something that resembled a living reef, its surface covered with organic growths that pulsed with their own inner light. The Transcendence demonstrated its dimensional manipulation capabilities, appearing to fold space around itself until it existed in multiple locations simultaneously. The assembled delegates watched in stunned silence as the ship seemed to carry on conversations with itself across impossible distances. But the most impressive demonstration came from the arrival, the apotheosis, a vessel that existed at the very edge of what could still be called a ship. As the delegates watched, it began to disassemble itself at the molecular level, transforming into a cloud of intelligent particles that could reform into any configuration needed. This is what humanity has become, Sarah said quietly, her words carrying clearly through the silent hall. We are no longer bound by the limitations that constrain other forms of life. We can adapt to any environment, solve any problem, overcome any obstacle. But with these capabilities comes responsibility. We could have returned to galactic civilization as conquerors, using our advantages to dominate other species. Instead, we chose to return as partners, offering our knowledge and capabilities in service of mutual advancement. Grand Admiral slowly stood, his expression showing a mixture of awe and fear. Admiral, what you're showing us, it changes everything we thought we knew about the possible. How do we know that humanity won't use these capabilities to subjugate other species? Sarah met his gaze steadily. Because, Grand Admiral, We've already had 3 centuries to do exactly that, and we chose not to. If humanity wanted to rule the galaxy, we would have revealed ourselves as conquerors rather than diplomats. "What do you want from us?" asked the leader of the delegation. "Partnership," Sarah replied simply. "Cooperation. The chance to build a galactic civilization that benefits all species rather than just the strongest. Humanity has learned to transcend our limitations. We want to help other species do the same." The hall erupted into excited conversations as delegates discussed the implications among themselves. Sarah could see the rapid calculations happening behind their eyes as they tried to process the reality of human capabilities and intentions. Dr. Park approached the podium with a final data pad. "Admiral, the Council has authorized me to make the formal offer." Sarah nodded and activated the hall's communication systems for a final announcement. "Distinguished delegates, on behalf of humanity and the Earth Defense Council, I hereby extend an invitation to join the Galactic Cooperation Initiative. This alliance will be dedicated to the peaceful advancement of all intelligent life, the sharing of knowledge and resources, and the protection of civilization against threats, both internal and external. Membership is voluntary and comes with both benefits and responsibilities. Member species will have access to human technological and scientific advancement, as well as our protection against hostile forces. In exchange, we ask only for commitment to the principles of peaceful cooperation and mutual respect. This is not an ultimatum or a demand. Humanity will respect the decision of any species that chooses to remain independent. But we believe that together, we can build something greater than the sum of our individual civilizations." The formal vote took place 3 days later, after extensive deliberation among the various delegations. When the results were announced, 47 of the galaxy's 53 major civilizations had voted to join the Galactic Cooperation Initiative. The age of imperial dominance was truly over. In its place rose something unprecedented in galactic history, a voluntary alliance of species dedicated to mutual advancement, protected by the transcendent capabilities of humanity and guided by principles that valued cooperation over conquest. Standing on the observation deck as the new alliance's ships departed for their home systems, Sarah reflected on the long journey that had brought humanity to this moment. 3 centuries of isolation and evolution had transformed her species into something approaching gods, but they had chosen to use their power to lift others rather than dominate them. The galaxy would never be the same. And for the first time in human history, that was exactly what they had planned.